Next deputation is from some guy named McManaman, somebody named Reed, and somebody named Wallace. I wonder what they've been up to. Pam's going to introduce. Welcome.
Thank you, Worship. I'm really pleased to be able to be here and introduce this presentation from our local organizing committee to wrap up Scotiabank Hockey Day in Canada 2023. No event the size of Hockey Day is possible without the support of community volunteers. And in 2019, Council appointed 3 co-chairs, Denise Reed, Jim McManaman, and Fred Wallace. Each were assigned areas of responsibility that leveraged their knowledge, skills, and abilities. This team was an immense support to city staff in the planning and execution of the event and championed the festival in the community and country and were truly ambassadors for the city and the game. The city was fortunate to have these 3 well-respected members of our community to serve as LOC co-chairs. Thank you. You are an amazing team. This event involves staff from across our corporation. Our amazing community services team, led by our events and activation coordinator, Jen Wright. Adam and the Parks team, who worked hard to prepare every corner of Harrison Park for Hockey Day, and Ryan and his arena staff, who made sure the facilities were in top-notch condition for every event. In 23 years working for the city, I've never been part of an initiative that has united staff from across the organization, staff from IT, corporate services, public works, the library, gallery. Staff also volunteered their time. For staff to come together and do something this big had a real positive impact on staff engagement, so thanks to our city team. With that, I'll hand it over to the LOC, and I think we start with a little video.
Mr. Ron McLean. And so it's Scotiabank.
Support the girls and get them on ice.
It's been surreal. It's a crazy thing.
Come on up here. So Dolly is the coach of the Waterloo team.
Score on it? Good. In Alberta.
Okay. We'd also like to acknowledge the support that we got from the Owen Sound attack. As you can see in the video there, or the photo there, there's lots of merchandise. And certainly Greg Hodnott and the game staff were terrific. It didn't matter whether it was the high school game, the attack game, the alumni, or whatever. Everybody got big sound and the big experience of being at the Harry Lumley Bayshore and J.D. MacArthur Arena, and the attack staff worked with us hand in hand. The first slide that I'd like to show is from the kickoff event. This is at the Grey County Administration Building. As you can see, the Brent Fisher is in the top doing the draft, but I think the real video, or the real photo that you want to look at, is the one on the bottom left, and that was put by Gord Harris and John Murdoch in memory of Bill Murdoch, and that's just a fraction of Bill's hockey jersey collection. I think we counted there were 90-plus jerseys there, and again, that's just a fraction, and every one of the jerseys that you see there either is connected to Owen Sound or to Scotiabank Hockey Day in Owen Sound. It didn't matter whether it was a Grey, a Plater, an Attack, somebody with the Mercuries, for example, or somebody who was participating on behalf of the NHL at Scotiabank Hockey Day in Canada. They were well represented at Grey County, and it was a really good kickoff. This next photo is from the Roxy, which was another great venue that was utilized during the event. The picture that I'd like to spotlight, again, is in the bottom left, or pardon me, in the top area on the left side. Those are the Ice Hawks, the under-13 team, and they were the greeting committee when the buses arrived from the Grey County building, and they showed a great deal of enthusiasm and really kicked off the event very, very nicely. As for the event itself, I think that it was a really neat night to be kicked off by the Rock the Sound Choir, who did Thunderstruck. I know that Rob Elder and Tyler Beckett have played before live audiences before, but to do a unique song or a hockey-oriented song, an original song, was probably special for them. And the other really neat thing about the Roxy event is that my understanding is that one of our unseen heroes, Gary Byers, has received an open invitation to go to Victoria, BC next year. They were so impressed with Gary, they said come out to Victoria, BC next year. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Jim McManaman.
Thank you, Fred. Listening to Fred speak, I'm wondering why we didn't have Fred do this entire presentation, really. See, my co-chairs aren't used to sitting through an hour planning committee meeting. It's just a nice warm-up for me. So, just to highlight the regional events, this was truly a regional event. There was an event at the Plex in Port Elgin with Bruce Power where 309 children skated with the Stanley Cup. And then the next day, it was Owen Sound's turn, and we had 347 people at the Bayshore skating around, taking pictures with their sponsors and families. My 9-year-old nephew was really excited to skate with the Stanley Cup. Not so much, he said there was a guy there named, he thought it was Larry McDonald. He got his Lanny mixed up, and he said a lot of people seemed to like him. He might have been the first guy that started McDonald's. I'm not sure who he was, but he was more excited about the Stanley Cup. So, and now I will turn the next phase over to my co-chair, Denise Reed.
Okay. No. I'm just going to the next one, right? Okay, Brianna's, yeah, great. The first event that we had at the Bayshore was the referee clinic, and we held it in the den. We decided to go off ice, and I asked Kevin MacArthur, who is a local boy and OHL ref, if he would help me organize it. And him and Dan Blackburn just flew with it. There were, 45 people there. Mixture between senior refs and young hockey players that the focus we tried to get was, let's get into refereeing. Can we do it? What's fun about it and that? And Kevin really rolled with it, had some videos from AHL refs, NHL ref Kendrick Nicholson from Sauble Beach. And then the big thing, I think, he had some door prizes, but I think the big thing that came out of it at the end was, after the talking and Ron giving his experience, was a mentor list. So we had senior referees that was sent out by Carly MacArthur to all the young kids that want to be refs, to know they can go to somebody. There is somebody that they can, what's it all about? Also, to all the pictures that were taken at the clinic were sent to all the participants afterwards. Let me try it again. Oh,
Are you doing, oh, you're tricking me there. Okay, school visits, okay. Being loud, that was an understatement. Excitement, understatement. But we went to Eastridge and Alexandra on the Thursday, and we went to Notre Dame on the Friday. Sportsnet celebrities, NHL Olympic alumni, Owen Sound Attack, OUA, PWHPA women were all there. However, with all the hundreds of kids, probably Cubby, Scotty, and Carlton, which were the mascots for that, seemed to be the favorites, you know, for the kids. But the schools really took it. They were giving guidelines from MLSC, which is Maple Leafs Sports and Entertainment, but they just got to do their own spin on it. They had guidelines, but that 10 minutes, they got to do whatever they wanted to do and came up with question and answer, bands playing, drumming by Dan Russell at Alexander, retired principal. So it was incredible, to say the least. We did go at the next one. Oh, yeah, you're going to help me there. Alexandra, we went, and then the next day, the next one was Notre Dame. And then the next one, Cassie Campbell Pascal visited Georgian Bay Community School, and that was on the Friday, and she read to a class who the book from that Scotiabank has produced called The Hockey Jersey. I was not there, but they say it was just amazingly receptive to her and what she was doing. On ice clinics, I guess a natural for me to do. I wore this jersey today, au contraire to my other one, because this jersey in red, white, or black was given to 285 hockey players from Owen Sound Minor Hockey Group and the Girls Ice Hawks. That's the number of the participants that what got to enjoy 9 ice clinics, 3 at the Bayshore, 3 at the Rec Center, and 3 at Harrison Park. And the coaches were given the jerseys. These were also the jerseys that the 200-some volunteers were given as well. These were all given by MKTG, which is the marketing firm for Scotiabank. Each player got this jersey, plus they got a little bag of goodies, various items, and the name plates that they had in the dressing rooms, their name up, their jersey on their hook, their bag. So when they walked in as a team, they thought, oh, this is pretty cool. It was done by the Attack, and that's how they felt. That was their team, their names were up there. And then everything that was given, they got to take with them. Or I ordered them to make sure they took it all with them. So the clinics were run by Toronto Maple Leafs' Greg Schell, who was absolutely spectacular. NHL alumni. The University of Waterloo team was supposed to just do it. They asked the University of Guelph girls to join in. There was 8 university girls, and they did the Owen Sound Ice Hawks clinics. We felt it was good to put those two together. OHL coaches and some players did clinic, and the PWHPA girls did the Saturday morning girls hockey fest at the Bayshore. Post-event, once again from Carly MacArthur, all the pictures that were taken for each clinic were sent to the team managers, and they were to decide, do whatever they wanted. I had one manager email me back, say, oh, wow, we do a scrapbook at the end of the year, and these pictures are going to be a part of that. So I think the most amazing part, it was the kids were so excited, and the parents and grandparents, especially at Harrison Park, where they're all around, and just the humbleness, the kindness of Lanny McDonald and Wendell Clark and Darcy Tucker, and they all just, you knew they liked it. They enjoyed it and wanted to be there, which just made it just that much more fun for everybody else. Okay, Fred.
Yeah.
You're on.
And just to backtrack to what Denise was saying about the jerseys, yesterday I was down at a Little League game, and before there was a scrimmage. It was the parents against the kids, and the kids, I'd say half of them had Hockey Day in Canada jerseys on, you know, the black and the white. So obviously there's a lingering impact and a lingering visual of this. Moving on to the next function, this is the banquet that was at the Harry Lumley Bayshore. There were in excess of 350 people there. As you saw in the video, Ken Reid and Ivanka Osmak, who are very big stage players in Canadian broadcasting, they hosted the event. It was emotional at times. I think Larry McDonald got quite emotional talking about Boreas Salming at one point. It was very supportive. We'll talk a little bit more in the future here tonight about what the Owen Sound Attack did and some others did for the 2 university programs. And also, it was very, very supportive in terms of the legacy that was left. And I draw your attention to the bottom picture on the left side, and that's the Owen Sound Minor Hockey Group, the Junior Attack, and the Owen Sound Ice Hawks program. They both received a check for $5,000 from Scotiabank as part of the initiative. And I know for Owen Sound Minor Hockey, and especially for the Ice Hawks, knowing Lindsay Brooks, who's on the sponsorship committee, that $5,000, very, very important and much needed. Picture on the far right of our mayor, our worship Ian Boddy, with Anthony Stewart. They're holding the Herb Carnegie skates, or the Herb Carnegie skates. I've heard his name pronounced both ways, but Herb was with the 1954 Owen Sound Mercuries, and these will be on display, as we'll find out a little bit later on. The day after the banquet, the morning after the banquet, that's when we had our gala breakfast with the Stanley Cup. In the upper picture, that's Piper Bill Millman, who very proudly was able to pipe in the Stanley Cup. As you can see, Andrew Ferentz was there. We wanted to thank Sharon Coulter and Sprucedale Farms and the Coulter family for sponsoring the breakfast. For those of you that remember Frank and know Frank, you know that this was the kind of event that he would be all over. And just to backtrack to what Denise was saying about the school activities, Jim Burlington was there with his grandson Sawyer. And at the end of the function, they had pictures with the Stanley Cup. You had a few seconds to go up and get your picture taken. And so Jim stood in the line with Sawyer, and Sawyer didn't really want his picture taken with the Stanley Cup because Sawyer, who's 6 years old, wanted to get off to Alexandra or Notre Dame or wherever the function was. So someday he might want a picture with Grandpa in the Stanley Cup, but not that particular day. There was something happening at school, which was, you know, kind of part and parcel. And I think if you talk to Denise and Jim, they'll both tell you that as much as they loved this function, there were different aspects of it that they missed totally because your bottom can only be in one place at any given time. So speaking of bottoms, here's Jim.
Thanks, Fred. No, that's the excellent point. That video that played at the start, both Denise and I were saying there were things on there that we weren't involved with and didn't know that even happened because we were so busy with different parts of it, you couldn't get to everything, which was unfortunate. Probably my highlight of the entire event was this, the High School Challenge Cup. For anybody who was there, in my opinion, I'm not sure there was a better atmosphere or noise level that's ever been at the Bayshore. It was something to behold. It was the East-West Challenge game back to, as many will remember, we used to have those types of challenges back in the good old days. Well, this was a revival of that, both a girls' hockey game followed by the boys' hockey game. And both high schools had a large representation. They bussed in a large contingent of elementary students. So there was over 3,000 kids screaming from the beginning to the very end at this game. And it was, like I said, the noise like you've never heard before. Interesting little tidbit, the Owen Sound Attack said that the busiest the canteen has ever been in their history. So that's an interesting thought. And some of the players on the ice, I also thought this was interesting. They couldn't believe how hot it was in the building because they've never played in a building with 3,000 people in it before. So just imagine, they're used to a relatively empty building playing, and but with that many people, it was just that much warmer. And again, I think the main thing for that is that most certainly will be the largest crowd most of those kids will ever play in front of. So a really, I think, important event for them and a memorable event. Both won by the St. Mary's Mustangs, but that wasn't the main point. The main point was they had a lot of fun in doing it. We're hoping, there's talk of making this hockey game a regular event. We certainly hope the two schools get together on that point. There was a hot stove lounge as sponsored by our main sponsor, Scotiabank. 120 players were in the River District. speaking with some of their hockey stars. There were numerous copies handed out of the hockey jersey book, and this was there throughout the day about a young female player from a diverse background, her first hockey game, and it just talked about bridging the gap between kids of all different backgrounds. So that book was handed out throughout the day. And now back to our main man, Fred Wallace.
Thank you, Jim. And just to further point to what Jim was saying about the crowd at the hockey game, I went to see OSDSS play St. Mary's in girls hockey about 2 weeks after the fact. There were probably 50 people in the rec center. They were supportive, but I was driving one of the players home after the game, and she said, "Man, was that dull." So the function during Scotiabank Hockey Day in Canada was really, really good. This was another excellent function that we had, and again utilized another facility right here in the downtown core, that being Hartwood Hall. And I will be honest here, I didn't know that this would go over as well as it did, but as you can see, it was packed. There were anywhere from 150 to 175 people there. You can see Elliot Friedman there on the right. He and Jeff Merrick were terrific with people. Generally, their podcast is done in isolation, and this one was on a live stage in front of a live audience, and there was not much rustling around. Everybody was pretty much fixated on what they were saying. And without question, the highlight of the event was 88-year-old Les Binkley making it up the stairs at Hartwood and being one of the interviewed guests there. Les is the last surviving member of the 1951 Allen Cup champion Owen Sound Mercuries, and I think it was big for the performance, and I know that it was really, really big for Les. Les was also with us the next night at the hockey game, the alumni game, the celebrity alumni game, and he took a bow, and I think that was pretty meaningful. And again, there's a picture of Lanny McDonald there, and to echo what Denise said, all of those people were so professional and so giving of their time. But I think what really stood out to me over the course of the week was that this was an Owen Sound function. And I think on that particular night, to have Harry Lumley's family and to have J.D. MacArthur's family drop the puck, you can see the referees there. They are all, that's J.D.'s nephew and his two sons, Greg and Kevin, Wilbur MacArthur. I think that was pretty important. On the ice, Bill Burlington played and Brian Kazarian played, and while both of them were excellent players in their day, they are also historic ties to the history of hockey in the city, dating back to the 1950s. At the end of the game, Scott McKelvey and his sister Susan Tromenhauser came to the ice surface to present the MVP trophy in memory of Ray and Georgina McKelvey, which again ties into the hospice information that we had tonight. And just a final thought on the alumni game and how special it was. You could see it not just for the players that were participating, but their families. I ran into Darwin Reed at the alumni function or the after party afterwards, and he was pretty proud of Jeff, that Jeff came back and played. I think in another case, the McLean family, albeit they are from Port Elgin, Brett came back, and I think there were 12 McLeans at the game. And if you know Brett's story, you know that Owen Sound, by and large, saved his life thanks to the AED up at the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center. So that was meaningful. And the one that made me smile the most was Alan Heppel, who said that was his retirement game. And he said it facetiously. He gave away his stick and he gave away his gloves as he left the ice. But I think truly for Alan's mother to come see him play in Owen Sound for the first time since 1978, and for Alan to make that circle and come back and make that his last game, I think that was very important. So the alumni game, the game itself maybe won't go down as an epic, but the surroundings and the trappings that took place with it, I thought were really, really terrific. Here's Jim.
So now we move to the day of the actual event from Sportsnet and Scotiabank. We had about 5,000 people visiting Harrison Park, and I'm going to preempt one of Fred's slides. There was about 8 million viewers that day, seeing live from Owen Sound, live from Harrison Park. We opened with the Stanley Cup Parade that started from Scotiabank down Main Street and into Harrison Park. City Fire Truck, I want to thank Chief Eagleson and Captain Long and Greg Nickel for their efforts in making sure that it had a proper entrance. And I must say, Andrew Shaw, no stranger to Owen Sound fans, he was there with the cup. He's forgotten, though, I believe, what January in Owen Sound is like. He showed up with no toque, no gloves, no scarf. and he did have a thin jacket on. Anyway, we've got him properly outfitted for an Owen Sound January drive down Main Street. We had 13, so the Cup made its entrance into the park and spent the day there. People were taking pictures and with their celebrities or with their families. It was the big attraction, I think. There were 13 local activations or booths throughout the park that people came to visit. They used the senior center for a warming center. I will say, I think I want to thank staff, the park staff in particular, Adam Parsons and his crew. The park couldn't have looked better. It was just amazing to showcase from, my in-laws were watching it in Halifax to a good friend of mine watching it in Vancouver. They all saw Harrison Park, and it really showed well and spoke well of the city. One of our biggest concerns, there you go, that's a great picture of everything that was the overview, I guess. One of our big concerns was busing. We weren't sure people coming in and out of the park, but it worked. Couldn't have gone better. There were several drop-off and pick-up locations. People seemed to get it and understand why they couldn't just drive into the park. That was coordinated by Andy O'Leary, and he did an amazing job. And what we had thought was, or certainly I had thought was a big concern, turned out to not be a concern at all. We had a ball hockey tournament in honor of Josh Armstrong. For those that don't know, a young hockey player passed away in 2019 at the age of 12. I talked about one of my favorite events was the high school game. This would probably be right there with it. A Memorial Ball Hockey Tournament. His team from 2019, and obviously they're older, moved on now, but his entire team showed up for the puck drop, the opening ceremonies, and that's that picture there. A very emotional time for the family and the team, and I just thought it was really highlighted the personal aspect of this whole event. $1,200 was raised to go to the charity of the Family's Choice, which was Second Chance Kids, and again, I think that was just a great memorial to Josh and the great kid he was. We had numerous on-ice clinics, skating, shinny, all sorts of things going on that ice surface. Many people crowding around to get behind Mike Fuda as he was talking to Ron McLean, trying to get on TV. We had many giveaways. There's more toques out there than, I don't know how many toques we gave away, but a lot. That hockey jersey book I spoke about. But again, just I think from about, we started around 10 a.m. till about 5 or 6 p.m. It was just go at Harrison Park. And again, meanwhile, at the same time, all the events were taking place at the Bayshore, so people had to get from one to the other. But I want to thank staff again at the park for just an amazing effort on their part.
Which brings us to Saturday at the Harry Lumley Bayshore. While Jim was running things at Harrison Park, there were also activities at the Harry Lumley Bayshore and J.D. MacArthur Arena. It started with the Girls Hockey Fest that Denise alluded to, and I think was a great opportunity and an eye-opening opportunity for the girls that play hockey in the Ice Hawks program, and the Girls Hockey Fest was very successful. It was followed at 11 o'clock by a game in the Professional Women's Hockey Association, and I'm really glad that event came together because it too was a real showcase for the very best professionals in North America playing. The game was extremely fast, and for those of us, including myself, who had never seen a pro women's game before, I thought that it was really eye-opening. And then on the bottom area, you can see the University of Waterloo playing the University of Guelph. And just to backtrack to the banquet for a second, at the banquet, Cassie Campbell is a graduate of University of Guelph, and so she pledged to put up a $1,000 bounty or purse to the winning team. And that $1,000 was matched very quickly by Bobby Ryan, and then the Owen Sound Attack got into the act as well. So there was $3,000 to the winning team's program. And in the spirit of sportsmanship, the Owen Sound Attack and Bob Severs again put up another $1,000 to the losing team. So there was $4,000 on the line here. And I know that the girls that play OUA hockey, very similar to what Jim was saying about the high schools, they do get crowds, but they don't get crowds like they had that particular day. And I thought it was really a terrific turnout. Just as a side note to that, Sarah Carmichael from Mix 106.5 was in the crowd with the in-house camera. And going into the event, Sarah wasn't wasn't sure exactly what she could do or would be able to do, and she had no problems. There were ice hawks all over the building. There were girls from Kincardine. There were girls from Georgian Shores, the Chatsworth Girls program. So really thanks to those programs, but also the sponsors that donated the tickets, because we pretty much had a full house for both of those games. Moving on, I just want to share some statistics here. Number one, owensound.ca/Hockey Day received more than 37,000 hits during the course of the event, which I think is a terrific advertisement. Also, on Instagram, the the Festivals and Events of Ontario gave Owen Sound Scotiabank Hockey Day free rein. They got 3,000 hits on that. Also, there was 60 posts on Sportsnet platforms right across their various activities, which was terrific. Want to move along with a couple of other statistics. Pardon me. You can see in this particular picture some of the Sportsnet activities that were taking place. And here's another Sportsnet post. We'll blow right by that, Ian. That's not the best picture, I don't think. Yeah, I like my glasses. And just a note about local media. Joel Darling is the Executive Vice President of NHL Special Events for Sportsnet. And at the Grey County building, he spoke to me and Ian Selecki and said that he'd never seen the level of support in another community that he got from Bayshore Broadcasting, the Sun-Times, and the various media outlets. So the event was certainly well covered. And as you can see there, I think, along with the pictures, 8 million eyes were on the city of Owen Sound during the course of that time, and certainly during the course of that day. And just further to what Jim was saying, different people have said to me that they didn't recognize Owen Sound, even if they were from Owen Sound. So I think the city came off in an extremely positive light. These are some of the banners and marketing and promotional tools that were used. What I find extremely neat is that many of the window Klingons still exist. In the ice surface, you can still see the logos, but I don't think anybody's in a hurry to take down their window Klingon, and I think it really sets, it was only 4 days, but the legacy and the impact is ongoing, and we hope to keep it going on forever.
So when we met as a committee, it was really important for us to involve the whole community, and not just by people that were buying tickets and attending the events, but how can we help the community as a whole, and to people and organizations that really could use our help. So this slide is just a social impact. From the banquet, the girls and boys minor hockey has always, as was already said, $5,000 each for their organizations. O'Share was given leftover food, and we're able to feed people that day and freeze meals. I volunteer at O'Share for 2 hours each week, and I know how excited, totally excited they were to get the food, and how they were able to pass it on that day, and with frozen meals for the future. Canadian Mental Health did the coat check at the banquet, and people were generous to give $600 for the coat check, and they were thrilled with that. The breakfast, the Owen Sound Hospital Foundation were beneficiaries of the profits for that breakfast, and O'Share received the leftover food from the breakfast to help feed their clients that day as well. Also, the Reach was provided with ice cream that was left over from the banquet. I think it was something like 7 pails. I'm not sure if that caterer just got things mixed up, but anyways, the benefit of Reach was welcomed, and they had a big Sunday day. Many living without shelter were provided with meals. I think it was Jen and some of her staff that literally went out into the streets and passed on meals to people. As well as already mentioned by Jim, Josh Armstrong, the ball hockey tournament, Second Chance kids benefited from that. So extremely fulfilling and rewarding for us to be able to do that as well. Okay, I'm going to try this. Maybe I was hitting the wrong button before. Okay, so the volunteers, we had over 200 volunteers dedicated to the 4 days, but also ahead of the event, filling my goodie bags for my hockey ice clinics, this unpackaging scarves, all of that stuff. we all know as volunteers that there are a lot of people don't really want to lead. They're a little afraid of that. But when asked to help, they're so willing to do it. And Owen Sound, I think, is just really fortunate that there's a lot of people that want to help. And we had just, 200 people. I actually thought it was more, but the 200 people is just amazing. I guess the one thing I want to say too is when you talk to the volunteers, they had pride. They were very proud that they were involved in this event and how much that they could help. Okay, this is Whitey. People know Paul White. He was the head of the drivers for the event, and he organized all the schedules to drive the VIPs to where they needed to go, drive the Stanley Cup from Toronto to Port Elgin, and all that. So Whitey did a really great job, and him and his drivers. Sponsors. We know we can't do it without them. The budget isn't there, right? The money isn't there, so we needed major sponsors, and I think that once again, you go out, the community is incredibly supportive. 17 sponsors contributed $131,800 in cash. $31,500 was received in kind from 7 sponsors. So that offset meals for volunteers, events, vehicles, linens, radio advertising, furniture. RBW printed the program. So all of that in kind. There were jerseys left from the alumni game. And so Jen, I think, came up with the idea, but came to the committee and said, what can we do with these? So we decided to give to all the major sponsors a jersey with their name on. And I specifically, we delivered them hand by hand, Jim and Fred and myself and Jen. And I know I specifically said to the sponsors, this was not extra money we spent. We did not spend your money. These were jerseys that were sponsored and given by Scotiabank. And this is how we wanted to really appreciate extra appreciation. I think that's me at the end, but I just wanted to say personally, it was a blast. And these two, crazy guys to work with, but we had a lot of fun, and I'm really quite honored to have been a part of it, and I'm glad that Pam asked me.
Thank you. So we appreciate council's time tonight. I know it's a busy evening, but we did feel that we needed to highlight a lot of things there, and I appreciate your patience. Now we get to the budget, which is an interesting. I think it's interesting in the sense that not many communities are able to present a surplus to their council. Usually these cost money. In this case, you'll see we've made money. The revenue was about $248,000. Our expenses were $202,000, and so we anticipate a surplus of about $46,000. As you'll recall, back in October of 2020, council provided seed money, I'll call it, of about $34,000 to enter into our partnership with Sportsnet and Scotiabank to get this whole ball rolling. Through that agreement, numerous who pays for what came through with that agreement, who's in charge of what, who takes care of what, and that's where we remain, as Denise had highlighted, with 17 sponsors at $132,000. That is our number from the event, which I think is, as some will know from not all events, you can say that generate a surplus like this. So we have several recommendations for council to consider. The first is what to do with that money. And as our recommendation that council take that money and invest it in the community foundation. You will recall from the 2007 homecoming, there's a bit of a precedent. There was a surplus there as well. And council of the day decided, decided to invest that in the community fund for that money to be spent in the community in perpetuity. So it is our recommendation that the same thing happen with this money, that it be in a separate fund under the Owen Sound Community Fund, under the Owen Sound Fund, which is an existing committee. There is a council representative, Councillor Hambley is on that committee, and then that the money be used to support children who have financial challenges to participate in hockey. I would suggest that there are, we'll have to work with the Community Foundation on a terms of reference. I'm sure Council has questions as to, the ins and outs of that, the particulars of that. The details are always important, and I would think that would come back at some point to Council for their approval. The second part of our recommendation is the framed jersey that we received from Scotiabank and from Sportsnet, and it is our recommendation that that jersey be hung in the Bayshore Community Centre in that hallway going towards the Hall of Fame across from the administrative office. And the last point is the Herb Carnegie skates that are back there. Quite a history with Mr. Carnegie and Owen Sound, and it's our recommendation that those skates be placed in the Sports Hall of Fame with an appropriate wording display to explain to people what they're all about and why they're there. So with that, I believe, yep, I'm ready.
Let's head back to Owen Sound, though. It's been a tremendous host for the 23rd annual Scotiabank Hockey Day in Canada. Ron McLean is there to wrap up what's been great coverage from Owen Sound. Ron.
Okay, David, if we're lucky, Fred Wallace will show up. That'll make a group of 7, which will tie in with these stamps designed by the great Tom Thompson. Pam Coulter, why don't you introduce the LOC?
Thanks, Ron. Really happy to introduce our LOC. We've called them the Dream Team all along. We have Jim McManaman, Denise Reed, Fred Wallace, who's joining us a bit late because he's the voice of the Owen Sound Attack, Brent Fisher, and then our staff, who's just been an absolute star all week, Jen Wright. So, and right behind me, Mayor Ian Boddy. So,
go ahead, Jen. Last word to you.
Yeah, you know what? A huge thank you to our community and to our sponsors, especially Sportsnet and Scotiabank, for coming together, all of our minor hockey groups, and especially our volunteers. We had over 220 volunteers over the 4 days of Scotiabank Hockey Day in Canada. So thank you, everyone, for joining us.
3 cheers, you guys. You were absolutely sensational. David, honestly, Les Binkley, the goalie, was 14 when he played on the road to the Allen Cup. They won in 51, and Herb Carnegie came a couple of years later and closed out his career here. It's a place that puts its stamp on hockey, forever young. Back to you.
Hats off, Owen Sound. What a great host they've been so far on Scotiabank Hockey Day in Canada. Vancouver ready to host. Let's head back to.
Thank you, Your Worship. Last point I just want to highlight, again, thank Owen Sound for really the community spirit. That's what made this happen. That's what made it a success. Thank our sponsors, as Denise said, particular Sportsnet and Scotiabank and the Owen Sound Attack. Couldn't have done it without them. 200 volunteers that came out, and I was concerned we might not get enough volunteers. We had more than enough, so it really worked out well. The parks and arena staff who went well above and beyond really need to be highlighted, but the main one I want to highlight is the city staff. This would not have happened without the support, the complete buy-in of your city staff, led by Pam Coulter and Jen Wright and Brent Fisher, and it was just, and Paul McGrath, sorry, you're not supposed to name names, but it really was all hands on deck, and your city staff did the city proud. From short story Adam Parsons, who was pretty busy that day, all of a sudden I turned around and he was refereeing the kids' ball hockey game. I said, what are you doing? Well, I had a little bit of free time there, and they needed a ref, so I'm doing it. And that just highlights, I think, really the staff you have and the tremendous resource they are to the city. So thank you to council, thank you to my co-chairs, Fred and Denise, what a great team they were, and thank you, most of all, thank you to the community for a great day and highlighting Owen Sound. Your Worship, over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Jim. When Joel Darling first approached me and we got him up here, he was coming because his son had played up here. I don't think they appreciated before the depth of the history or the breadth of the hockey culture in this community, and the stories that they got to tell were overwhelming. So thanks very much to Joel Darling and Sportsnet for choosing Owen Sound, Scotiabank for sponsoring it. Thanks to all of our staff, all the sponsors, all the volunteers, and certainly everybody across Graham Bruce who was involved and came out and enjoyed it. It was great for people to be able to tell their hockey stories, and it's great the hockey stories that were created, as you talked about the youth games and how loud that was and how much fun it was. And you can picture kids that are 10 or 12 now telling the story and to their kids about this weekend and how great it was, and the atmosphere of the city, and it was really great. So, you know, they say if you want to get anything done, you've got to ask a busy person to do it. And it was great to have Fred, who is certainly the greatest voice and advocate for sports in this town, especially minor sports, girls hockey in particular. He's been really great at backing it and promoting it. Denise, who has probably taught more kids to skate in this town and more hockey players to skate, and got them successful, as well as, she says, you know, doing a couple hours at O'Share, et cetera. And Jim, of course, who's been one of the most active and successful community builders in our community, from soccer to Kiwanis, who he's a president of while he's doing this. So thanks to the three of you. I do have a memento there that I want to present to you guys, and then I'll have a motion after. I didn't really explain that while I was sitting up there. We've got certificates of thank you to hang in your walls for the rest of your legacies, and very much appreciate everything that you did. Fred?
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll get we'll do one with everybody if we can. Denise, come on up.
I'll hang this at my
Great. Thank you very much. Jim? Thank you, Your Worship. Come on up, we'll get the photo together.